Welcome back to more FPL content. This will be my team selection for Gameweek 36. I only have one free transfer and I'll be discussing my Gameweek 35 performance, but it was quite underwhelming overall, and you can see my FPL challenge team on screen. And this week, any Liverpool or Arsenal player will have their points doubled, so I have Virgil van Dijk and Salah to fill that sort of quota, but I've also got Visser and Mbeumo, and also Sells in goal. So that's my current FPL challenge team, and I'll be showing you my final squad during Saturday's deadline stream. The same goes for my FPL squad, of course, and also talking about everything you need to know from team news, injury updates, suspensions, and everything you need to know ahead of the upcoming deadline. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and also the notification bell so you know when I upload a live stream for both UCL Fantasy and FPL. After extensive Champions League coverage over the week, we still have a lot to look forward to with the Champions League final towards the end of this month for match day 17. I will be covering that with the usual deadline stream, a best team video, and my own team selection later this month. And beforehand, all the focus will be on FPL as we finish this season and then look forward to yet another campaign. Check all the social media links in the description below for my X, Instagram, and Blue Sky, Dylan RCM, the Discord server, FPL League, and Spotify can also be found in the description. Without further ado, let's jump straight into it. It may not have been my best week in FPL terms, but we reached 33,000 subscribers during Tuesday's deadline stream for UCL Fantasy, so thank you very much for all your support. And we have also reached over 100 members. But David Raya in goal, terrible pick. He has been awful for me in FPL and UCL Fantasy alike. Only a 1 point against Bournemouth. Arsenal conceded twice after taking the lead, and their record from winning positions has been absolutely awful because they have dropped so many points, and that has cost them in the Premier League table. They're now in a quite precarious situation in terms of finishing in the top 5, but based on the results this week, it looks like only one win is needed, and that's against Southampton away, really, in Gameweek 38. If Arsenal win that game, they will be in the top 5, but I think their aspirations for this season were definitely much higher. As for my defensive line, I also had Munoz, Milenkovic, and Gvardiol. Only one of them delivered, with the Croatian getting a clean sheet and 2 bonus points in that 1-0 victory over Wolves. But Milenkovic blanked in that 1-0 draw against Crystal Palace, and Daniel Munoz was booked in the same game. So those two were extremely disappointing, and to make matters worse, I didn't even have Eze in my setup. Now, Ismaila Sarr was on my bench, but there was a big disappointment up front. I captained Mbeumo, who got 5 points through an assist, but Brentford scored 4 goals against Man United, so that's still quite underwhelming in the grand scheme of things. Jacob Murphy was subbed off before 60 minutes, and Morgan Rogers blanked in a 1-0 win over Fulham, and he created a big chance for Ollie Watkins, who was quite poor in front of goal on that particular day, and Mohamed Salah blanked in a 3-1 loss against Chelsea, and his form has been pretty terrible actually. Only 1 goal since blank Gameweek 29, and that came against Tottenham Hotspur, and he obviously did very well there when we free hitted, but a lot of us have Salah in our normal teams anyway. And my final 3 players in the forward line, very mixed bag as well. Alexander Isak got a goal through that late penalty. He got 9 points overall. Marmoush blanked, and he was actually a strong consideration for the captaincy for me. And Mateta blanked once more, and I think selling him to one of Visser, Chriswood, or Cunha is definitely on the agenda for me this week. And on my bench, you can see Verbruggen, Sarr, Saliba, and Livramento. They all blanked as well, and I'm a bit kind of thankful that I didn't have a big return on my bench because that would have made it a little bit more frustrating, but it is probably the sign of a team that's on its last legs now. The Gameweek 30 wildcard gave me some momentum, but I think I've kind of lost it in the last couple of weeks with 2 red arrows out of the last 3 game weeks. So in the end, it was a very disappointing week for me, one of the worst of the season, only 41 points, and I went down around 20,000 places, so I undid a lot of the work I actually achieved in my free hit for blank Gameweek 34, where I made significant rank rises, and now I'm kind of back to square one, and I'm around 20 points off the top 100k, so this would be my worst ever rank in FPL. I need to do everything possible to avoid that, but I think it might require something a little bit more aggressive, potentially taking hits and going for the jugular there, and that's something I kind of lacked in Gameweek 35, where I made a template move of Saka to Mbeumo. I only gained a few points from that transfer, and I was considering selling one of Murphy, Rogers, or Sarr to Jared Bowen for a -4, and that actually would have paid off, not by many points, but it still would have been a significant aid to at least clawing the deficit and minimizing the red arrow, and I definitely could avoid more weeks like this. But before I go into my transfer plans, let's discuss the prices. Daniel Munoz went down in price overnight, so my squad value went from 101.9 million to 101.8 million, and I've also got 2.8 in the bank. And as you can see, not much has really changed in the last couple of days. I think with Blank Gameweek 34 as well, that maybe deceived some people with the price changes and even the algorithms, because a lot of people only had these players for a single game week. But David Raya is still 5.6 million and Saliba costs 6.6 million, but they haven't really offered great value in the Arsenal defence. Milenkovic costs 5.2 million, Gvardiol is 6.4, you've got Rodgers at 5.7, Mbeumo has gone up to 8.2 in the last week or so. Jacob Murphy remains at 5.3 million, but I wouldn't be surprised if he goes down fairly soon. Mohamed Salah's been very consistent at 13.8 million. Mateta and Marmoush are quite similar at 7.7 and 7.6 million respectively. And Alexander Isak is always kind of going up and down, but he currently is on the up and he's 9.6 million at the moment. And Ismail Assar's on my bench, 5.7 million. And Verbruggen, who hasn't returned once since I got him on the Gameweek 30 wildcard, he actually went up in price a few weeks ago to 4.6 million, and Livramento has the same price tag. So those are all the prices of my 15-man squad. I've only got one free transfer, but I'm considering taking a -4 or a -8 hit to make 2 or 3 of these moves. It all depends on how I feel by the deadline stream. But Saliba to Aina is one possible transfer to double up on that Nottingham Forest defence against Leicester at home. And the main reason why I do this is to actually facilitate an upgrade in other positions, because otherwise I could just keep Saliba, then start Daniel Munoz away to Tottenham or Livramento facing Chelsea at home. But there is a good chance of a clean sheet there for Nottingham Forest. But the main appeal is that it makes me actually able to buy De Bruyne whilst also having Mbeumo and Salah in that midfield. So that's where selling Saliba to Aina could come in handy. And one of Jacob Murphy, Sarr or Rodgers would make way. At the moment, the most likely would be Jacob Murphy, but I'm also strongly considering selling Sarr, who has been a huge disappointment all season. I just haven't been able to catch his returns, and he's very inconsistent, and he tends to get some massive returns in 1 or 2 games, but it's kind of tough to predict when he's going to do so, unless he's playing Aston Villa, because for some reason he loves playing against them. But that is my current plan: Jacob Murphy to De Bruyne, and also buying Aina for Saliba, and I could also take a -8 hit and go from Mateta to Vissa. So this transfer and the first one I discussed in that defensive line would allow me to buy Kevin De Bruyne and also keep Mbeumo and Salah in the process, which is my ideal scenario. I could just make a transfer for free and basically avoid taking massive hits like I'm planning to right now, but I think this could actually be worthwhile, and it maybe is a bit of a shame I didn't do something similar last week and kind of spread the risk and the hits across different weeks. But I think Vissa is a standout in that forward line. I've been saying it for several weeks now, and doubling up on him and Mbeumo is a great option, and Vissa can rival Mbeumo for the captaincy. There's no question about it. He might not have the penalties, and the Cameroonian has the midfield advantage over Vissa, but he still has the bonus points potential. He gets the bulk of the big chances from open play, and I think Vissa has been very consistent in 2025. But looking ahead to my provisional Gameweek 36 team, this is not locked in. You can find out my final squad during the deadline stream on Saturday. I would start Verbruggen away to Wolves, and I was considering buying a goalkeeper like Matt Sells facing Leicester at home. That could be a great option, but in terms of funding De Bruyne in the midfield, that doesn't really help me too much, and I would be 0.4 million off it in terms of my squad value. So that's why Verbruggen is in goal at the moment. The alternative is David Raya away to Liverpool. I'd rather avoid that if possible. All my Arsenal players are on the bench, or I've just sold them in the last couple of weeks, and the plan is to sell Saliba in Gameweek 36, and also Bukayo Saka did make way last week for Brian Mbeumo. In my defensive line, I've got Aina, Milenkovic and Gvardiol if I decide to bring in the Nigerian right back for William Saliba, and I do like the look of this defensive line overall. On paper at least, it looks very solid. Now 2 of them are away from home in Verbruggen and Gvardiol, but those 2 Forest defenders, they look very solid there. They've kept 4 clean sheets out of the last 6 matches at home, and Leicester are one of the worst attacking teams the Premier League has seen in quite a while. In the midfield, I've got Rodgers, Mbeumo, Salah and De Bruyne, so that could match most wildcarders, but I think the advantage they would have is they're not taking a -8 hit in the process, and also they would have Jared Bowen instead of Morgan Rogers, which is probably an upgrade, to be fair, even this week, where I don't rate any of them particularly highly. The alternative is to start Ismaila Sarr over Morgan Rogers, or I keep Jacob Murphy, sell one of the other two instead, and maybe start Jacob Murphy against Chelsea at home, but I'm not convinced about his minutes. And in the forward line, Wissa, Isak, and Marmoush looks particularly solid, and the one or two changes you could make, you could say Chris Wood or Cunha are significant upgrades over Marmoush, and I think the Egyptian will be a big risk in terms of minutes in the weeks to come, and in terms of the new role he has on the right-hand side to accommodate De Bruyne as the false nine, we have seen a downturn in form for Marmoush, and he doesn't look as effective or threatening in that forward position on the right-hand side, but I still think it's a great option against Southampton away, and we can reassess the situation in Gameweek 37, but we might even get leaks or information before the deadline, because it is one of the early kickoffs, so to speak, on Saturday afternoon, and if a reliable source indicates that Marmoush will be benched, I could sell him to Wissa instead and keep Jean-Philippe Mateta for one more week. But I'm also open to buying Cunha or Chris Wood alongside Wissa and making two forward transfers, but not for a -12 hit. That would probably mean avoiding one of De Bruyne or Aina, perhaps even both, and instead taking a -4 hit just to reimburse and also reinforce my forward line. Now on my bench, I've got Raya, Sarr, Munoz, and Livramento, and that doesn't look particularly great, but ultimately I want to focus on my starting 11, and that's going to be the most important thing, and I've got enough squad depth, I think, to cover for injuries or suspensions, but I'm taking a lot of hits in the process with this provisional squad, and things could change depending on any league lineups, team news, injury updates that we get over the next couple of days. And at the time of this recording, we still have the Wednesday match in the Champions League for PSG versus Arsenal. That could have a bearing on certain things that happen, even though I'm quite open to selling my Arsenal players anyway. You've also got the Europa League and Europa Conference League games on the Thursday, and also training sessions, press conferences, all of that will play a part in my final transfer plans. But with the captaincy, I'm currently going for Mbeumo, and De Bruyne is the vice, should I bring him in. Those two are the front runners for the armband, but I'm also open to Wissa and Marmoush, especially if we get the information that he starts. Otherwise, I'd probably just go to De Bruyne instead from the same Man City team. I'm not looking at captaining a defender, to be honest. That's something I'll probably leave for UCL Fantasy, especially for the Champions League final in matchday 17. And Morgan Rogers and Isak. I think Isak is definitely an option against Chelsea at home, but I'm not looking at Rogers right now. He might do something against Bournemouth. He has the capability of scoring or assisting against all of his upcoming opponents, but for the captaincy, that's a different story entirely. And I think Salah against Arsenal is still a great option, and he would be in my top 5. I think the Gunners could be there for the taking just a few days after facing Paris Saint-Germain, and I think Liverpool will play a stronger team than they did against Chelsea. But I think Mbeumo and De Bruyne are the standouts on paper with their fixtures in mind, and Wissa should not be overlooked. He can match Mbeumo and sometimes even better him, as we saw in Gameweek 35. But before I preview Gameweek 37 using the website fpl.team, let's discuss the expected points for the upcoming deadline. Verbruggen has 3.9 according to Fantasy Football Hub, which is just 0.1 lower than David Raya, but I'm still more inclined to start Verbruggen this week, and in an ideal world, I would buy Sells as my main goalkeeper facing Leicester at home, but it just doesn't give me enough money to buy De Bruyne whilst keeping my main midfielders in that position. So Aina has 4.1, Milenkovic 4.5, Gvardiol has 4.9 facing Southampton away, but with all Man City players, I think there is an element of risk in terms of rotation, and Man City could rotate quite heavily there and still get the job done. Rogers has 4.8, Mbeumo 5.3, it does seem quite low actually, and Salah is always up there. He is currently top with 7 expected points, and De Bruyne has 5.4. Marmoush is narrowly ahead with 5.5. Isak is always going to be one of the front runners, and he has over 6. And Wissa actually has a higher expected points figure than Bryan Mbeumo this week with 5.5. And the others on my bench include Ismaila Sarr, who has 4.5. There's not much in it between him, Murphy, and Morgan Rogers. And my current plan is to sell Jacob Murphy, but that could change. You've also got Munoz and Livramento with nothing spectacular there, but Daniel Munoz has 3.6 facing Spurs away. He could get something for a goal or an assist, but I don't expect Crystal Palace to keep another clean sheet against Tottenham Hotspur like they did in the reverse fixture this season. So based on the expected points, once more, Fantasy Football Hub are recommending Salah as the captain and Isak as the vice, but this week I'm also considering De Bruyne, should I bring him in, and Brian Mbeumo. They're the front runners for me, and Vissa isn't too far behind in the overall pecking order. As always, feel free to put your thoughts in the comment section down below. Do you think the -8 hit is way too excessive, and what other transfers would you recommend? Which chips do you have remaining, and what are your transfer plans for Gameweek 36 and beyond? And if you want to see a best wildcard team video, then let me know in the comment section. Continue the conversation across my social media platforms, which can be found in the description below. And like this podcast, let's get it to over 150 likes on YouTube. But what you can see on screen is my current transfer plans and provisional squad for Gameweek 37 if I decide to buy Aina, De Bruyne and Vissa for a -8 hit in Gameweek 36. I would have Raya at home to Newcastle, Milenkovic and Aina facing West Ham away, but one of them could be on the bench. Munoz facing Wolves at home, and Ismail Assar would be first on the bench there. Gvardiol, De Bruyne and Marmoush facing Bournemouth at home. I would also have Salah away to Brighton, and he could be the front runner for the captaincy there. Mbeumo and Vissa facing Fulham at home. Rodgers with another home fixture facing Tottenham, and Isak away to Arsenal. Livramento will be on the bench facing the Gunners there, and Verbruggen faces Liverpool at home. So it doesn't look particularly great. So whilst the -8 hit looks very appealing for Gameweek 36, I don't think it really improves my squad for Gameweek 37. And for the final Gameweek, it does look much more enticing in terms of the fixtures. I've got Raya away to Southampton, a back three of Milenkovic, Livramento and Gvardiol, with decent fixtures overall, particularly in the case of Livramento. De Bruyne and Marmoush could be decent choices as well, but I might have to sell Marmoush earlier than expected, maybe even for this deadline if he's benched against Southampton, and I could see rotation between him and Erling Haaland, or perhaps he just drops to the bench and you see De Bruyne and Haaland in a new sort of system there, combining those two players in De Bruyne's final matches at the club. Mbeumo and Vissa facing Wolves away is decent. Salah facing Crystal Palace at home is always going to be a great choice. Rodgers facing Man United away compared to Sarr facing Liverpool away. So as you can see, it's a good platform for Gameweek 38 and 36, but in between, Gameweek 37 can be slightly concerning despite the fact that we don't have a double and blank, which would have made things even more complicated for me. It just doesn't seem particularly appealing, and the -8 hit could be way too aggressive, and maybe I should just be a little bit more cautious of my transfers. But given the rank I'm at, I'm also willing to go the extra mile and try something a little bit different to achieve the top 100k by the end of the season, and then use that as a platform to do much better in the next season, because last season and this one have been very underwhelming to say the least. But those are my current transfer plans. I'll delve into them in more detail in the deadline stream, where things could definitely change based on the information we have after the European games, and also the press conferences, team news, which will all be provided on this channel with different graphics, top 10 captaincy lists, and much more. But as always, let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Let's improve each other's teams and try to win our mini leagues and go up the rankings. We've now reached the end of this video, the FPL team selection for Gameweek 36. With only one free transfer and no chips remaining, I'm in a difficult situation and it will be challenging to get those green arrows, but it's still possible, and our aim is to end this season as strongly as possible, to take calculated risks and do something different to the rest of the pack. Thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it insightful, then like this video, subscribe to the channel, and also hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single upload or live stream for both UCL Fantasy and FPL. Follow me on X, Instagram and Blue Sky, Dylan RCM, and check all the links in the description for my Patreon and the championships, for early access to my videos, amongst many other perks. The Discord server, FPL League and Spotify can also be found in the description. I'll see you very soon for more FPL and UCL Fantasy content. That includes a deadline stream on the 31st of May for the Champions League final.